I don't know if you've ever literally seen an angel. I have. A few different times in my life, actually. Remember when I was a little kid, my brother and I we were fighting. We were getting into it, kind of loud, after bedtime. The first time I saw an angel, it was the angel of death. He looked just like my father. Luckily for my brother and I saw an angel of light right after that looked just like my mom. When I was a senior in high school, not long after my first of 500 conversions, it was after school one day. There was an activity going on, and I was asked to help with it. So I was there, and I went to a pretty big high school. We had, probably about 2,500 students or something. It was pretty large. And so it was not weird to sometimes have a day where you saw people you didn't know, because you didn't know everybody. And I was standing on a stage about this big at our high school auditorium, and there's a sea of people I knew, and then there was like this vision. Like I saw this vision of an angel. And she was a sophomore. And she was gorgeous. Gift from heaven gorgeous. Like getting stupid and I can't remember my own name gorgeous. Like, you're so pretty, me so not pretty, you so pretty. So it was like a mice and men, I don't know what was going on. I was like, you're so beautiful, you were gorgeous, you gorgeous girl, me live under bridge, scare kids, And I went over, I felt it was like a tractor beam. It was something else out of Star Wars. I was just kind of being pulled across the stage towards her, which made absolutely no sense. You see, I'm going to tell a story about how it was back in the old days, back in the days of yore, back before everyone had cell phones and social media, and young men were required to actually have character and courage and walk over and talk to a girl and look her in the eyes. It was really amazing. And yeah. Now, again, hey, I'm not dissing my brothers in the house. I'm just saying that a woman is worthy of eye contact, okay? And effort takes more than pressing a screen, okay? Now, true story though. But I know the guys here are not like that. Anyway. But see, there was something about it because when you go and approach a girl to talk to her, it required courage and stupidity. And something I like to call character. And it was really scary because when you go to start to talk to a girl that you knew was too good for you and obviously holier than you because she's angelic, one of the worst things that would happen is this, and guys, you'll understand this part. When you want to go talk to a girl and all of her friends feel the most merciful thing they can do is to get really close to her and then stand there and talk about you and judge you. They just did when they come circle her and surround her and say, now I'm talking about him while he's trying to talk to her. Now I'm talking about him. And it makes us even more self-conscious. Guys, it feels great, doesn't it? It's awesome. Yes, amen. But I had to talk to her. I didn't know what I was going to say. I had to talk to her. I walk across the stage, and I'm just entranced by her. But I felt I had to talk to her. And I started a conversation. I introduced myself and offered my name, and she offered hers. Hey, where are you from? And she just moved to this school, and that's great. And I was wearing a retreat T-shirt from retreat, kind of like this one. And the shirt said, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus! Really big. And I had been wearing it all day because my youth minister, in typical youth minister fashion, was like, I challenge you to wear that shirt. Yeah. Okay. So I put the shirt on all day long. I've been hearing it from all my non-Jesus, Jesus, Jesus friends. Hey, Hart, nice shirt. But I had to wear it, right? And I didn't care if I was wearing this stupid shirt. I didn't care if people were making fun of me. I had to talk to this girl. Because love is not passive. Love does not stand and wait. Love pursues. And even though I didn't know I loved her yet, I knew I loved her. So I walked across the stage, and it turns out, and she looks at me, she goes, it's a nice shirt. And because I was in a little bit of a defensive posture, because I've been made fun of all day, I look back and I go, you got a problem with my shirt? Moron. She looks back and she goes, no, seriously, I really like it. It takes a lot of guts to wear that to a public school. I said, are you Christian? She goes, yeah. I said, you're not Catholic. She She goes, actually, I am Catholic. Just a second. Thank you. So I did what any responsible young Catholic evangelist and missionary should do. I invited that hottie to Mass with me. Hey, I was worried about her soul, And so I did invite her to the Life Teen Mass and the Life Night at our parish. Actually, I have a picture. I have a picture of her. This is back this is a couple years ago, back in the early 90s. She's a gorgeous girl. What was really cool was I was 17 when I met her, and I don't know, just over a decade after that, she became my wife. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. To this day, still most beautiful woman I've ever met, inside and out, just absolutely amazing. And so we got married in Rome. It was cool, And but love doesn't stand and wait. Love pursues. It pursues. A few years after this, I was invited out to Hawaii to speak. And you gotta understand something, that doesn't happen when you're in ministry. You don't get invited to go to Hawaii. You get invited to Fargo, North Dakota in January, okay? You get invited to Louisiana in the summer, where there's so many mosquitoes that everybody is a blood donor, all right? You don't get invited to Hawaii, right? So I'm driving in the car and I get this phone call. It's like, hey, Mark, calling from the diocesan office, and it's kind of breaking up. Top was off my car. She's like, yeah, diocesan office in Hawaii Youth Day. I said, when would you like me to be there? She goes, well, don't you want to know the date? I'm sure I'm available. She says, don't you want to pray about it? Hang on one second. Yep, Jesus said do it. Yep, got speed dial. It's good. So before you know it, it works out, right? At the time, we only had a couple kids. My in-laws were watching the kids. And before you know it, my wife and I are being magically whisked away to Hawaii. And there was an event I had to speak at, and then they were going to let us stay for a few days and just enjoy the island. So I'm like, this is awesome, second honeymoon, leaving the kids. We got there the first night. We had dinner on the Pacific. It's right on the water. Literally, you hand the menu, back to the waiter. You're like, I want the trout, and I want the sea bass, or the thing swims right out of the ocean and falls on your plate. So fresh. It was awesome. And we were singing and dancing. I got a picture. There was a sunset. It was the most gorgeous. It was perfect. It was glorious. I'm there with my bride. The kids aren't there, so we can hear each other have a conversation. We can hear the end of each other's sentences. We're not wiping noses. It was awesome. Right? It was beautiful. So we had this youth event. We speak at the event, and then the next day, Sunday morning Mass, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be epic. I'm gonna hear the homily. I'm not just gonna be the dad in the back with the demoniac kid who's like the whole time. My kids are so calm until the consecration. Right when you need to be quiet, and they're like, oh, it's quiet. No, 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 no. So, I'm all excited. We're in this beautiful hotel, 8th story of a 12-story hotel, right on the water, sleeping with the door open, the waves and the wind. It's a Sunday morning. I'm lying in bed with these 75,000 thread count sheets. It was amazing. I was so excited. My wife, it was early. We weren't in any hurry. She got up to go to the bathroom because it had been, 5 minutes. So we're lying there. And while she's in the other room, the bed goes, and I'm like, okay, practical joker. That's one of those beds you put quarters in, the whole thing vibrates or something, And then I was like, but this is not a Holiday Inn, it's not 1970, right? And then all of a sudden the bed again goes, and two of the frames on the wall go, smash, smash. And I was like, God, in his infinite mercy, had whisked us away to Hawaii for the first earthquake they'd had in 26 years. 26 years! So now I'm in the bed, and then now my little white butt's out of the bed, and I hear my wife go, ah! Like, so she fell off the throne, right? So she comes running from the bathroom, and I'm like running over, and now everything's in slow motion, classic male superhero, no. And I remember because I was born in the Midwest, I remember growing up in the Midwest, they're always like, in case of a tornado, go to a doorway. And now, I don't know if the same thing applies to an earthquake, but I was always like, why a doorway? Because it's easier to find the bodies that way? I'm like, I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go running to the doorway, and I don't know why I did this. This is classic stupid male superhero thinking. I get over to the doorway, the door frame in this hotel room, and I looked at my wife, and in slow motion, I wrapped my left arm around my wife, and then I did this with my right arm. I have no idea what this is gonna accomplish. I'm holding up 4 floors of concrete and rebar, bad artwork, It's crazy, right? But the whole thing is shaking. These sirens go off outside, all the electrical goes out in the hotel, and I'm thinking, all I can think to myself is, save your bride, save your bride, save your bride. And this whole thing is shaking, and I'm like, this thing is gonna go down. And then I had an epiphany, a moment of clarity. I had an idea. I said, what if I shot put my wife out that window? Don't you judge. Because you see, we were 8 floors up, but we were only about 10 or 15 feet off the pool. So I thought, she's a little itty bitty thing, I thought if I get enough momentum, I can shot put her over the railing. And I literally started to. I felt my hand the small of her back, and I kind of started to move her. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. But I wanted to. And guys, huddle up. I could have made it. Okay, anyway. So I started to, and I'm like, what am I thinking, right? And I looked at her, I'm like, we gotta get out of here, right? And grab the rental car keys and cell phone, running down the stairs. I'm standing outside in the parking lot next to my rented Ford Focus Fiesta thing, in my boxers and my t-shirt, she's sitting there. And we don't know what's gonna happen. There's a tsunami warning. All the cell phone towers blow up because every tourist tries to use their phone at the exact same time. And I'm standing in the parking lot, I'm just like, I lose it, right? And then I kind of calm down, and my wife, in a way that only my wife could do, she looks at me, she goes, why did you bring me here? I'm sorry? I started thinking about it, though. And all of a sudden, I had this tremendous peace that came over me, this big smile came over me. For this reason. Even though we had been married, even though I'd known her for years, even though I stood before an altar of God in a house of God, before a priest of God, and I pledged my life to her. I said, I want to live for you, I want to die for you, I want to live so that you will get to heaven. Even though I pledged that, until you find yourself in a situation where your life is on the line, where your butt's on the line, it's easy for love just to become a word. But it's until you so deeply and ardently desire the salvation of another, it's until you get to that point that you would be willing to sacrifice your own life so that the other lives. You see, people can throw around the word love all the time, but love without sacrifice ain't love. And love without a willingness to suffer is not love. And I was so happy in that moment because it was like I had turned a corner somehow in my own selfishness. It was like that for that one fleeting moment, I wasn't so concerned about me. My only thought was save your bride. And I was so excited because I thought maybe, just maybe in my selfish life, maybe I'm finally starting to figure this out. Maybe the grace of the sacrament is finally starting to penetrate my thick skull. Is that love without sacrifice is not love. Love without surrender is not love. Love that is self-seeking is not love. You'll notice in the Gospels, Jesus never says, I am love. He says, I'm the bread of life, I'm the light of the world, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, I'm the resurrection of the life, I'm the good shepherd, I'm the vine, I'm the door. He never says, I am love. St. John says God is love. Jesus never stands up and says, hey, everybody gather around. I'll drop a little news flash on you, okay? 10 characters or less. I am love. He never does it. You know why? Because love is not, nor can it ever be, self-referential. Love never points back to self. Love always points to the other. Love is always active. Love pursues the other and the good of the other. True love works for the salvation of the other. When Jesus went to the cross for you and for me, the groom pursued the bride, the church. Jesus pursued you. He still pursues you. His love was active. His love was sacrificial. But it was not self-referential. It wasn't about him. On the cross, it wasn't about him. It was about you. The cross is about you. We don't think of it that way. I think as Catholics, one of the greatest gifts we have is to begin and end all of our prayers with the sign of the cross. But sometimes I think that we just do it so haphazardly, we do it, it's a reaction. It's like, hachoo. We walk in, we hit the holy water. It's just like slappity-sloop. We don't even think about it. We don't think about the significance of it. I honestly believe that a lot of Catholics think that we just start and end the prayers with the sign of the cross because we lack creativity. Like there was a bunch of old white dudes in Rome a couple centuries ago. How should we start the prayer? I do not know. How about the sign of the cross? Sound good to me. Our church does not lack creativity. Our church says to us, we're going to begin and end the prayers of the sign of the cross because the cross is the greatest sign of love the world's ever known. Pope Benedict said the cross is love in its most radical form. But I'd be willing to bet that since we've come here, you've probably had the sign of the cross in prayers between workshops, small group mass. You've made the sign of the cross 30 times. How many times you make the sign of the cross have you thought about the blood shed on Calvary for you? That you have a God who so loves you, who is so in love with you, that he would rather be brutally murdered than risk spending eternity without you. How often do you think about that fact? How often do we think about Jesus stretching out his arms, bearing his back, taking on our sin, taking on our wounds, not because he deserved it, because we did. And he would rather die than his bride, the church, die. No thought of self, only thinking of you. Back then, when they scourged him, they would take what was called a cat of nine tails. It was like a leather whip, multiple leather whips, 9 leather pieces. At the end of each piece, a small jagged piece of bone or a small stone. And when the soldiers would lash out and strike the prisoner, it would embed into his skin. And when they pulled it back, it would tear the flesh. Now, Hebrew law said you could only do it less than 40 times, but the Romans did not have to adhere to that. The Romans could do it as much as they wanted. The Romans did not invent crucifixion, but they perfected it. They could torture a man within an inch of his life. And they beat him to a point where his bones are exposed. His skin is hanging on like ribbons. He goes into massive dehydration. His heart starts to rapidly beat, to pump blood that is no longer there. His kidneys are going to begin to shut down. They form the crown, they post it upon his head, they hit him in the head with a heavy reed. They take a heavy patibulum crossbeam and they stick it to his back. And believe me, when your back is that exposed, that splintered wood is now literally becoming part of your back. He goes through the crowded city streets during the Feast of Passover with 1 million extra pilgrims in the streets. There's not even room to move. You think it's busy trying to get in and out of these doors? You can't move an inch. And every inch he moves sends shockwaves through his body as people run into the cross, and the splintered wood, it digs even deeper into his flesh. Massive dehydration. A sac of fluid starts to form around his heart. His heart continues to try to beat blood that's not there because of the massive blood loss. His kidneys shut down. He gets to Calvary. They take 9-inch spikes, they drive them through his wrists. They elevate him naked for all to see as a sign of what happens to people who mess with Rome. At any moment, the God of the universe could have blinked his eyes, called on a legion of angels, and the Romans, who were so high and mighty, would have stood, had their eyes open, and seen 1,000 angels with hands on swords, waiting for the instruction to decimate the Roman legion, waiting for the instruction to lay down justice for the just one. And the greatest miracle of Good Friday was this, that he didn't call on a miracle. He chose you. He chose you, and he chose me, because we have a God who so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, so that all who believe in him would not perish. You have a God who loves you so much that he would rather die than spend eternity without you. That's a bold kind of love. That's the kind of love that demands a response. That's a love that pursues. What happens is because we've heard the story so many times, we don't pay attention to the details, or we don't really listen. I want to pray this passage with you. But before we do, I want you to make the sign of the cross with me. And I want you to do it like it's the first time you've ever done it. I want you to do it with appreciation and with reverence. I want your silent sign of the cross to be your response of appreciation to the God who gave everything for you, who spilled his blood for you. That when your hand touches your head, that you would recall the wounds of his crown and his scalp. That when your hand touches your chest, you would feel that sacred heart beating so rapidly. You'd be near the side that will be pierced to let the blood and the water flow. That when you make the sign on your shoulders, you would feel the splintered crossbeam across your own shoulders. That when you make the sign of the cross, you realize that you're marking yourself with the world's greatest sign of love it's ever seen or ever known. A sign of love that's sadly foreign in today's culture. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. A reading from the Gospel of Luke. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him and the criminals that were there, one on his right and the other on his left. And then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." And he divided his garments by casting lots. And the people stood by and watched. The rulers, meanwhile, sneered at him and said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the chosen one, the Messiah of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you're the king of the Jews, then save yourself. Prove it." Above him, there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Then save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed, we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we receive corresponds to our crimes. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So the thief on the left says, "Aren't you God? See, if you're God, you'll end my suffering right now. If you're God, you'll do something about this. If you're God, you will act now in the way that I want you to act. That's how you'll prove you're God." The one on the right says, "Look, we deserve everything we got coming. He hasn't done anything wrong. Remember me." I think most of us are the thief on the left. I think most of us go to God and we say, "If you really loved me, you'd solve this situation with my parents, with my friends, inside myself. If you really love me, you would act. And if you don't act, then the only answer I have is that you don't love me. If you, God of the universe, are willing to work off of my schedule and my carefully thought out plan, everything's gonna go perfectly." Can't tell you how annoyed I get when God does not seek my opinion before he acts. You see, the thief on the left wanted to be healed. He wanted the suffering to be over. He wanted it to go away. The thief on the left just wanted to be taken down. Get me out of this. Heal me, save me, whatever. Just get me down. Get me off this cross. The thief on the right was faithful. The thief on the right knew that he deserved what he was getting. He didn't want to be taken down. The thief on the right, he wanted to be taken up. He didn't go to Jesus saying, "Teach me." He didn't even go to Jesus saying, "Heal me." He went to Jesus saying, "Save me. Remember me. Be one with me." That's what it meant to remember. It meant to bring two things together again. For the Jewish people, remembering was not like, "Hey, take a Polaroid and a selfie so don't forget it." When the Hebrew people would say remember throughout the Old Testament, it was an intensive bringing back together. It was almost to relive the experience when the two would become one again. That's why God consistently throughout the Old Testament keeps saying, "Remember what I did for you. Remember this. Write this down. Remember this." Why? Because you're gonna forget. Because hard times are gonna come, because sin is gonna happen, because you're gonna choose yourself. You're gonna forget. That's why you gotta remember what I did for you. That's why the church says, make the sign of the cross so that you never forget, that you remember. What do we say at every single Mass? Do this in what? In remembrance of me. Don't forget what I did for you. Don't forget what I'm offering you. Don't forget that I love you. Because when bad times come, and they will, you're gonna need to do what? To remember. Jesus is gonna be right here in a few minutes. Why? Because love pursues. He's not okay just sitting back and waiting. He wants your heart, and he wants it now. Not after you graduate college, not after you get a good job, not after you got a 401k, not after your kids are grown and out of the house. He wants you now. He's a jealous God. He wants your heart. He wants all of your heart because he knows nothing else in this world is going to satisfy it. Jesus is literally going to come into your midst again in that monstrance, which is shaped like what? Like a cross, to remind us that love and life come out of the cross, not death and suffering. That's in the cross of Jesus Christ that your suffering makes sense. It's only in the cross of Jesus Christ that your suffering makes sense. You should be so thankful that he suffered. Because if he would have called on a miracle that day, if he would have been on the cross and been like, yeah, it's just, I've had enough. This is ridiculous. And he jumps off the cross. Let's bounce. And all the angels appear. Well, see, then the next time that you're suffering because someone you love is sick, or because people you love are getting divorced, or because you're afraid of your future, or because you look in the mirror and you don't love the beautiful creation of God that you see, then the next time that you're suffering and you went to pray to him, you'd stop and you wouldn't trust him. You know why? Because when he suffered, if he chose the easy way out, you wouldn't be able to trust in his love. You'd say, I'm suffering, God, and Jesus would say, I know. You'd say, no, you don't. Because when the going got tough, you got going. When the going got tough, you jumped off the cross. You see, we have a God. We have a God who loved you so much. He said, I never want him to doubt my love for him. I never want her to doubt my love for her. I never want them to forget my love. You have a God who can look at you and say, what else can I give you? The world says you love is give and take, and the cross says that is not true. The love is give, period. There's no and take to the cross. His hands were nailed open. There's no and take to the cross of Jesus Christ. Love is give, and he gave it all. And he's going to show up right here again tonight, giving it all, offering it all. And he's going to say to you, do you want the life I have to give you? Do you want the water that I have for you? He may have said, I thirst on the cross, but the reality was he was thirsting for you and for your salvation. You have an answer tonight. He's going to put the question to you. He's going to come right into our midst again, pursuing you. It says in the book of James, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Well, you know what? He beat you to it. Tonight, he's going to draw near to you. And you have a question you're going to have to answer. Do you just want God to heal you? Or do you want God to save you? Are you the one on the left or the one on the right? Family, the greatest decision I ever made as a teenager was to pursue with my whole heart the one that I was drawn to love. The lover pursued the beloved. And I've been eternally blessed because of it. But it took courage. It took humility. It took a willingness to put my neck out there, not knowing what was going to happen next or how it was going to go. And tonight, the Lord's coming right here. The lover has come to seek the beloved again. He's holding nothing back. You have to ask yourself if you are. You don't have to leave here the same person you came. You don't have to know the same life you've known. that there's a love and a peace and a joy available to you, the likes of which you've never known. But you have to accept his invitation. That's why we make the sign of the cross. That's why we do it in remembrance. So that in the darkness of the world and our sin-tattered hearts, we never forget what true love is and what true love requires. It's never self-referential. It always pursues. Because a love without sacrifice and a love without suffering ain't love.